Hi, everyone, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Or if you're watching this on Instagram, you can find more videos by following the YouTube channel, which has a playlist on Buddhism, of which this is the next part. Also, you can check out my website, becomingnobody.org, for more offers. So today, I wanted to do a video on the 5 remembrances in honor of Thich Nhat Hanh, the beautiful Zen Buddhist monk who passed away at the age of 95 the other day. He was a beautiful being, a great peace activist, and of course could be considered much more than just a part of any specific religion. A beautiful author of mindfulness and meditation practice. And a short experience that I had was when I was at a yoga studio when the news was brought to us that he had passed, and I fell into tears, and it wasn't just tears of sadness, but it was also joy and love and understanding, and I could feel the power of his presence and everyone he'd touched, and I could feel that he was now infinite and everywhere. And the instructor actually ended the day's training, and we used our song at the end to send him on his way. So in honor of him and his book Fear, which I later picked up at home, I started doing a practice he states in there called the 5 remembrances. And so these are very powerful contemplations or meditations we can do to look into the true nature of really centered around death and loss. Things that Thich Nhat Hanh says we fear and that we kind of bury, we don't talk about, they keep our energy stuck, they cause vast amounts of suffering. And he's saying that through these practices, we can liberate ourselves from them so that we can experience less suffering and we can help others to do the same. So I invite you to follow me on this little sort of meditation, this sort of contemplation as I go through these remembrances in honor of him and read some of what he has to say about them. So maybe just sit quietly wherever you're at. Make sure you have a quiet space where you could really contemplate what we're talking about here. So the first remembrance, I am of the nature to grow old. I cannot escape growing old. And then he goes on to say, breathing in, I know I'm of the nature to grow old. Breathing out, I know I can't escape growing old. And so this is some of the text that Ty wrote. He says, surely I'll have to grow old. This is a truth that's universal and inevitable. But most of us don't want to acknowledge it, so we live more or less in denial. Yet deep down in the recess of our minds, we know it's true. When we suppress our fearful thoughts, they continue to fester there in the dark. We're driven to consume food, alcohol, movies, etc., in an attempt to forget and keep those thoughts from surfacing in our conscious mind. Running away from our fear ultimately makes us suffer and makes others suffer, and our fear only grows stronger. We must be able to accept this as a reality, as the truth, and not just as logical fact. Reciting this remembrance is not mere restatement of the obvious, but a chance to take in a truth that we need to experience directly. We can take a few moments to let that penetrate into our flesh and bones. We shouldn't just leave it to our intellectual understanding. Yes, of course, now I'm young, one day I'll get old. That's just an abstract notion that brings no benefit, especially since our mind usually works to repress and forget about it right after we say it. So take one more time to contemplate that, and you can do these every day if you want to for a couple minutes. So you say, breathing in, I'm of the nature to grow old, you. And then breathing out, I cannot escape growing old. So you contemplate how this body that you're in will be old one day. It will decay. The great power that you have will go away. And so just contemplate this and feel it now. Feel it now. The second remembrance, I am of the nature to have ill health. I cannot escape having ill health. One day we'll be lying down on the bed, and even if we want nothing more than just to stand up and take a step, we won't be able to do it. That's why we must see right in the present moment. Having a body surely will get sick. One day, seeing this naturally will drop our arrogance about our good health. The path of right conduct will appear. We'll make good use of our time and energy to do what's needed and not be carried away by senseless pursuits that can destroy our bodies and minds. What we need to do will become clear. This reminds me of when my Kumi passed away last year. I remember him looking at his hands that had turned all yellow as he was sick, and he said, "My hands, they used to be so beautiful." Because we cling on to that, and if you see that as part of you, Ram Dass used to say when he'd look at his old hand, he'd say, "Man, if this is just, look at this just beautiful decaying hand." He said, "What a beautiful part of nature with all these little spots and stuff." He's like, if I was attached to this, if I took this to really be me in my hand, I'd freak. But if I just see it as a phenomena happening, I could be present with it. I could enjoy the beauty of it. So Thich goes on to say, "It's a simple and true fact that you're reluctant to face. You want this fact to get lost because you're afraid." So one more time, breathing in, I know I'm of the nature to have ill health. Breathing out, I can't escape having ill health. So you contemplate how you're going to get sick one day. Your body's going to stop functioning the way that it functions. You, not just someone else that you're going to feel bad for, but you. It's going to happen to you. And so we go on. The third remembrance, and this is a very important one. Breathing in, I know it's in my nature to die. Breathing out, I know I can't escape dying. So you sit there and contemplate about how you're going to be gone. You're going to die. And this is the one that everybody's most fearful to contemplate, that they might tell you again intellectually, I know I'm going to die. Everybody dies. But they don't live in that fashion. So it says, it's a simple and true fact that you're reluctant to face. You want this fact to get lost because you're afraid. It's painful for you to look deeply into it. Death is a reality that we have to confront. The subconscious mind is always trying to forget that, because when we touch that fear and we're not equipped with the energy of mindfulness, we suffer. Our defense mechanism pushes us to forget. We don't want to hear about it. But in the back of our mind, the fear of death's always there, pushing us on. When we really face the fact that we will die one day, and maybe sooner than we think, we won't embarrass ourselves doing ridiculous things, keeping up the delusion that we're going to live forever. Contemplating our mortality helps us focus our energy into the practice of transforming and healing ourselves and our world. So there's a story in the Mahabharata, the Hindu text, where Yudhisthira, the king, is asked by another being, what's the most wonderful thing? And he says, the most wonderful thing is that although each day innumerable beings pass into death's abode, still man thinks he will live forever. So he says that in the sense that the way people live is as if they're never going to pass. Now, this has nothing to do with living in the present moment or saying like, oh, I'm living in the present, I'm not focusing on death. It doesn't have anything to do with that. It means they live not living the way they would if somebody said you're going to die tomorrow. And then the end comes all too soon and they're unprepared for it because they were always in denial of that nature. That's why people have a hard time sitting with dying people. That's why they have a hard time telling people they're going to die. That's why they have a hard time being with family members that are suffering from degenerative diseases and watching them die. So you can go and sit by a cemetery or even contemplate when you drive past a cemetery. All those dead bodies in there, all those skeletons, those were beings just like you. Those beings had childhoods. They had friends. They ran around and did stuff. They worked and had dreams and gathered money and wanted good for their kids, and they worried about things. They got in arguments, and they worried about things that were petty and didn't matter, and they got mad at their bosses, and they fought with their families, and they had good times and bad times, and they gathered up money, and they worried about their insurance, and they watched sports games, and maybe they did spiritual practice, or maybe they ignored their soul. Maybe their minds were quiet, or maybe their minds were loud. Maybe they spent their years in loving, or maybe they spent their years in fear. And all of those beings passed on, and so will you. There'll be a time will come to pass where you in this present incarnation will pass on. You'll be, and who you think you are will be no more. So this vast amounts of energy can be yours if you can understand, grasp, acknowledge, and accept this, which is an extremely difficult practice. These 5 remembrances we're doing are not, they're not to be taken lightly. They're not easy. Now, this one for me is equally as hard as the death one. He says, all that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change. Because it's sometimes we're like, I don't care about my own self going on, but my family, my kids, my pets, all that's dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change. There's no way to escape being separated from them. Breathing in, I know that one day I'll have to let go of everything and everyone I love. Breathing out, there's no way to bring them along. And then you sit there and contemplate how all your possessions and your home and your parents and your children and your pets and your friends, and you'll have to let go of it all one day. And you'll either let go of it now and live joyfully without attachment, flowing and as part of the dance, honoring and loving, or it'll be ripped away from you in pain and sorrow because you've held on to it in a clinging way. So he says, everything that I cherish today will all have to leave behind tomorrow. Whether it's my house, bank account, children, or my beautiful partner, everything I cherish today I'll have to abandon. I cannot carry anything with me when I die. This is a scientific truth. What we cherish, what belongs to us today, won't be there tomorrow. We'll have to take leave not only of our most cherished objects, but of the people we love. We can't take anything or anyone else with us in our death. Yet every day we strive to accumulate more and more money, knowledge, can't even take that, fame, and everything else. Even when we reach 60 or 70 years of age, we keep grasping for more knowledge, money, fame, and power. We know that the mementos and belongings we covet must all be abandoned one day. That's why in those monastic life practice not to collect things. The Buddha said monastics should have only 3 robes, a begging bowl, a water filter, and a sitting mat. And even these few things they should also be prepared to release. The Indian saint named Karoli Baba Maharaji, Ram Dass's guru, all Maharaji owned was he had a blanket that he used to wear, and he had a little water pot, it said. And when he was getting into the car to go to the hospital right before he died to leave his ashram, he dropped the blanket, and one of his devotees picked it up for him, and he said, leave it. One should not be attached to anything in this world. The Buddha often said that we should not be attached to even the foot of the tree where we like to sit and sleep. We should be able to sit and sleep at the foot of any tree. Think about that. Our happiness should not depend on having that particular spot. We must be ready to let go. So to think of this radical non-attachment that he's talking about here, this isn't something we can just have overnight. This is something that really has to be practiced and cultivated. Then he says, if we can't let go, we'll suffer not only on the day when we're finally forced to do so, but right now, today, and every day in between, because fear will be constantly stalking us. So not only will you suffer when that time comes, you'll suffer all the time because, and I know this from my own life, so think about it for yourself, because there's like that lurking notion in the back of your mind that it's like, it's all going to be gone one day. Like, does it even matter? Like, aren't we all just going to die in the end? So the best way I can explain it is, rather than hiding from these fears, which fester, create little literal energetic blocks inside you, keep you from realizing your full potential, from being your highest self, from helping others. If you can lean into the burn of feeling these things, it can't be explained, but there's vast growth on the other side, vast wisdom, compassion, understanding, and energetic release. And it does have to be done by going through the burn, by feeling this. And so this is what Thich Nhat Hanh's trying to convey to us here. At the end of this section, he says, the Buddha once told the monastics to look up at the sky at night, to see the moon. He asked them whether they saw how great the moon's happiness was as it traveled in the vast open space. As practitioners, we should allow ourselves to be as free as the moon. If we're attached to obtaining more and more wealth, fame, power, and sex, we lose our freedom. Number 5, I inherit the results of my acts, of body, mind, and speech. My actions are my continuation. The fifth remembrance reminds us that when we die, the only things that continue us are our thoughts, words, and actions. That's our karma. In other words, that's what propels our soul on. And these acts are very important. See, Rumi, the great Sufi mystic, he says, when you die, because when you die, everything is much more fluid. The veils that cover you, it's like if you were scrunched up in a little box, and when you die, you are free from the box. That's how your mind is. So it's like veiled is the best way I can put it. And then when you die, everything's so much more clear and fluid. Like you have so much more of a breakthrough, a deeper sense of understanding of the universe. You'll be able to see things more clearly and more truly. And Rumi says, your evil deeds manifest as ferocious forms upon your death. The cruel words you've said and the cruel acts you've done appear as beasts in front of you because they project out of your mind. And so what he's saying is none of that's ever lost. So our good and evil deeds, we do have to face them. It's almost like in Christianity, how they talk about the judgment, and we think of it sitting before God. And so there's similar notions in the Buddhist and Hindu traditions and Islamic traditions too, which Rumi comes out of. And it's actually true, is what I have to convey to you, is that those acts are stored in the karmic DNA of the soul. So like you have to face them when you die, and that's what propels you onward. And that's what he's saying here. And even more scary is things done in silence, things nobody knows about, intentions that you had that nobody was told about, things you got away with. Nope, that's all gonna be a thing. It doesn't disappear. It's all there. And so like if somebody's spent their whole life ignoring their child and they didn't raise their kids, or they beat somebody, or they oppressed a group of people, or they were a really mean boss, or they did a lot of crimes, or they sold drugs that killed people, those kinds of things, and didn't care about it, anything. And it could be subtler things too. You'll be able to see that clearly, and there'll be vast suffering there. If you even say you hung out with your kids, but you never paid attention to them, or you had a pet that you treated badly, you'll be able to see that in its entirety. And it'll cause great weeping and suffering knowing what was lost. Now, the same is true of good acts as well. All the good you've done, all the people you've helped, all the times you've listened, all the times you've shared, all the good karma you've created, that doesn't go away either. That propels you on as well. So anytime you're doing good, it's always stored up. It's always there accumulating. So being of service is never wasted. It's never not noticed, to say the least. It's worth much more to you than simple recognition. So Thich Nhat Hanh says, here we're speaking of inheriting not our parents' savings, but the fruits of our own actions. What we have thought, said, and done is called karma, which in Sanskrit means action. What we do, say, and think continues on after the act's done, and its fruit follows us. Whether we want that inheritance or not, it stays with us. Then he goes on to say, we have only one foundation, that's our karma. We've no other ground. We'll receive the fruits of any act we've done, whether wholesome or unwholesome. So it's like, what are you going to do? Whatever you do will be, that karma will be, it'll come up. It'll come up. That's what propels you onward. That's how beings end up in different states. That's what determines where you go next. See, a lot of people think that when you die, you just get to choose where you're gonna go, but it's not so much because who's the chooser? What does that mean? Choose? Like you're just like, yeah, I'm going here. Well, you're propelled onward, and you're propelled in certain destinations based on the DNA of your karma. And so the more free you are, the more it seems that you have more of a choice in your destination. If you're really bound, you're just going to be in agony and confusion and get kind of sent somewhere, basically, is a way to say it. But you can't escape your karma. You can't just be like, yeah, I'm going to do all these terrible things and I'll just choose to go to heaven next life. It's not how it goes, unfortunately, in the universe. So the point of all this is, the name of this book is Fair, if you want to get it. It's called Fair by Thich Nhat Hanh. And he has many other beautiful books too. Like I said, he was one of the highest beings on this earth. And, we're a blessing that he came down to be with us. But we just make this to bring mindfulness to our fair. And if you listen to this, the best next step anyone can take is to do a practice like this, to do a sitting practice, to do a meditation practice, to join a group where they could talk about consciousness. If anyone has any questions, please comment, like, subscribe, email me. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. Thank you. We'll be back soon.